Hello and welcome back to Life Unpotted. This is Sophie here. If you are a new listener, I see that we have a lot of new listeners, which is really exciting. Wanted to take a moment to just remind you that this podcast is a space for you to reflect. Daisy and I come on the mic every Tuesday and Thursday, and we share our experience waking up from the illusion, waking up from being so tied to our mind, being so tied to the mental chatter and to our thoughts that have been controlling us. For me, it's been for the past 30 years. And it's a difficult journey to reprogram the mind after so many years of learned experiences that want to keep us stuck in fight or flight and anxiety and thinking we're not good enough and thinking that we can't experience life to the fullest. And what we're here to do is just talk through what our experience is on this journey. And every day feels like a million years because I am so present now. And as I'm more present, I'm able to observe what is really going on in each moment. And being present, being aware, yes, it is beautiful. It allows us to recognize the beauty of life. But I don't want to act like it's a walk in the park either, in the sense that sometimes we do discover very uncomfortable things. Sometimes we do figure out that, wow, my relationship with my parents or with my family is rooted on control. It's rooted on a sense of conditional love. And what I want to talk about today is primarily control within families, within family dynamics. And I think for me, I never, ever thought about this ever. Because, you grow up as a kid, right? Like we all grow up as a kid. And the parent-child relationship in my household was my parents told me what to do. I think that's pretty standard, right? Like when we're so young, we need somebody to guide us. We need someone to direct us. But it comes to a point where we're okay. We are adults. We are able to make decisions for ourselves. And that can come with this awareness level of recognizing that your parents maybe are not exactly what you once viewed them as. And that's been my experience, kind of waking up to realize that, holy shit, like my parents are just two humans who are existing on this planet and who also have a shit ton of shit to work through. And that's a freeing realization. It's a freeing realization because you recognize that it was never you, right? It was never you that was causing their discomfort. It was never you that was responsible for their pain. It was never you. But that also comes with this level of pain because if you're like me, like I love my parents. I do. I do love my parents, but my relationship with them is changing. I'm 30 years old, I'm growing up, and I'm waking up, It's not even necessarily about age because you can go your whole life being 40, 50, 60 years old and still never really question your upbringing. Or question, okay, am I on this path for me? Or am I just living out my parents' dreams? Am I living out my family's dreams? Am I staying so stuck because I'm so scared to disappoint them? And I really want to talk about this today, the topics of control, the topic of learning to be ourselves with our families, learning to recognize that we're not responsible for our parents' emotions. And so that's where I'm at. And I guess the first thing I would like to say is that we all go through the world trying to control things to make us feel better because we all have this bucket of pain that is hard for us to look at. So we manipulate our external environment and we manipulate those around us subconsciously. We may not realize it. And I do this all the time, right? I need this to go a certain way so I can relax. I need this to go a certain way so I can be happy. And what happens is that our parents also are being driven by control if they haven't looked at their shit. If you have not looked at your shit, if you're not doing the work, if you're not dissecting your inner world and understanding how your inner world is dictating your life, you're going to be driven by your pain. And I think that's just where I want to start in recognizing that, wow, like I'm starting to really see that in my parents, how much control has been there the whole time, and maybe that they don't even recognize it. And it's kind of sad to realize, wow, I think they're suffering a lot more than they might recognize.
I mean, I think this topic of just control in general is rampant. We try to control things that we don't even recognize. So, of course, that's going to be true within families. Because if we do things on a day-to-day basis trying to control other people so that we feel comfortable, whether that be trying to control the fact that the person in front of you pulled out in front of you and is going slow, like that's frustrating. So we try to control that by getting angry. If we act like that in our day-to-day life, of course we're going to act like that within families. So it's only going to get more complicated when maybe your kid does something that you don't agree with that makes you feel just as frustrated when, say, someone pulls out in front of you and they're going slow. That same example, it's the root of the same thing. The same reason you're going to get mad that you have a lack of control over how fast you can go on the road is absolutely going to apply to if your kid does something that doesn't align with how you see yourself positively, or having the ability to control something to guarantee some sort of reflection or outcome. So, of course, if we are a species that tries to control things to make sure that we feel happy, of course, that's going to show up within families. Of course, it's going to get messy within families, because just because you bring someone onto this earth does not mean that you can control how they spend their life, how they act, how they dress, who they date, what they choose to do for work. You can't control these things. And I think that, I don't know if it's this idea that we're sold, have a family and you'll be happy. We'll have love within a family. But I do think it gets to a point sometimes where there's too much expectation put on how a family should look. I think of this show series that I watched 3 or so years ago. I think it was called Little Fires Everywhere. It was a Reese Witherspoon production, and it's about this family in a traditional, very nice Ohio suburb, and there's a lot of stuff going on. But what it brings me to at this point is there's like this quintessential perfect family, upper middle class. They look like they just walked out of a magazine where everyone has perfect hair, perfect clothes, just very clean cut. And there's 3 kids, and there's the mom, and she's super angry, like underneath it all, that she had this 4th kid. She wanted to pursue her career, but she ended up having this 4th kid because that's what her husband wanted. And this 4th kid is nothing like the other kids. She doesn't want to dress like the other kids dress. She doesn't want to listen to the music. She doesn't want to do anything. And you see how the family just crumbles from this mom not being able to control the youngest kid to represent this quintessential perfect looking life. So I think that this is a very relevant topic, and it is the question of, why do people try to control their families to look a certain way? What does that mean to them?
Well, it's interesting to think about, because I think you can get so caught up in the idea of family. And I see this especially looking back on like previous generations, or like the boomers, or growing up in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, is the idea of the nuclear family. And what I've been realizing as I've been becoming more and more aware, it's almost like the family can be empty. It just, you grow up, you're no longer just going to go on vacations together or do all these things together simply to do these things, right? Like, you're going to want to have a real relationship with the people you're spending time with. And I think a lot of the time, like, I was going down a path where my relationship within my family, like, let's say I stayed a lawyer, I became a partner, like, it would have just fit the mold. So it would have fit the mold, and that would have made it cohesive. And it just so happens that I hit like a giant roadblock when I came to terms with my sexuality, and that caused a rift in my family. But what I'm realizing now, like, it's not sexuality. It's being myself, like, not just trying to be the person my parents have wanted me to be. And that could be down to, where do you live? Who are you dating? How are you showing up in this world? Do you have tattoos? Like, what clothes are you wearing? Like, the image that parents can put onto their child to maintain, wanting them to be very specific. Why? So that you can create this idea that family is this perfect thing, like the Brady Bunch, or like this perfect thing, like don't air your dirty laundry, like don't let anyone know that beneath that image, beneath the image you're putting on to the public of we have a perfect family, everything's great, we have money, we're going on vacations, we're doing all these things. What's beneath that? Fucking misery of people not even connecting and people not even knowing each other. And it's like, of course, it's like families become like a massive Band-Aid to pain. Families can become a massive Band-Aid to the reality that there's so much pain that no one in the family has confronted. Like, my parents, we have never all sat together and had a family conversation about the truth of our family. And it's almost like so much shit goes unspoken and then this is what happens. Like you haven't really gotten to know each other outside the parameters of the parent-child relationship. You grow up and then there's tension because a parent's like, well, why aren't you acting like this? This is, you should be doing this. Oh, you want to move cities. This is too risky or whatever. You're hanging out. Like, it's like, because what's really going on here? There's not a real connection. There's not a real deep understanding of I don't love you under any sort of condition. I don't expect anything from you. And it's the same thing of friendships. It's the same thing of any sort of relationship that we have in our lives. If it's based out of need, expectation, and to make someone feel better about themselves, it's not a real relationship. It's manipulation. Like, quite frankly, that's what that is. And I can talk about that because I have done that. Oh, I only want to hang out with certain types of people. I only want to do this. Like this very specific curated image of trying so hard to be something, but who are you beneath that? So I just think it's so interesting, like as I'm getting older now, the discomfort that comes of realizing, wow, like I'm not a 15-year-old anymore. So that means I have my own set of opinions and beliefs and the way I view the world. And it's like, it's not even opinions and beliefs. It's an understanding of awareness of you're not who you think you are. And my parents don't really know that, right? I think definitely they've done some work, but they're still caught up in it. So it's like, I am getting to a point now where I don't think that needs to implicate me because I don't need to be scared to be myself within the family. And I think this is probably really, really relatable for so many people. And we've had conversations with our Patreon members on our community Zooms about this, just like really breaking free from the perpetual pain that exists within families and recognizing it's not your responsibility to fix anything. And it's not your responsibility to change your parents. I think your only responsibility is to be yourself. And that's painful because it might come with, and it does come with, letting go of what you always thought and letting go of what you always knew. And it might make you face that your family was not really what you once thought it was. And that's painful. It's confusing, but I think it can really open up this beautiful evolution to perhaps a new relationship where you are two adults, two humans existing, not under the parameters of control, not under parameters of, I need you to do this. Under, oh, hey, mom or dad, like, this is me. And let's get to know each other because I don't think we really do. So I think it's a really interesting topic that I'm curious, like other people growing up, like it's weird. You're no longer a kid anymore, So we should probably stop acting like we're that same family from 1998. Like, who are we really now?
I think this idea, not this idea of, but like the reality of as you grow up throughout your life, and this is our first time growing up out of our 20s, or you out of your 20s, me into my late 20s. This is our first time doing that. So it is, of course, our first experience with also watching our relationships change within our family dynamics because we are no longer the 10-year-old. We are no longer the 20-year-old. which you can get away maybe your entire life with always playing the role of the kid within your family dynamic. I'm sure you'll see that there are people who never leave that role as the kid within their families. Oftentimes, having kids of your own will catapult you out of the child role within your family dynamic. But other times, it's not that. Other times, it's you coming to terms with who you really are and you changing. I mean, think about it. Your parents have gone through so many changes in their life, and then they had you. And then just as you are growing up out of your 20s and your 30s for the first time, your parents are also growing out of their 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever it may be, for the first time. Like, what the common ground is that we're all experiencing this new terrain for the first time. It's kind of like a shifting reality for the first time, because childhood is long. Childhood is 18 years technically. And if you want to extend it, if you go to college, and that's kind of infancy continued as well, it's 22 years of childhood. Okay, you want to extend it a little further with our generation? We're 23, 24. Okay, let's say it ends at 25.
Dude, holy shit. It's like you could just spend your whole life like still trying to be a child. Like,
well, that's what I'm trying to paint this picture of. I'm 28 and you're 30. And I guess us getting into a relationship for different reasons, it catapulted change within both of our family dynamics, with our individual families and collectively with each other. Because in a way, okay, we're in the quote unquote period where we're building a new family, and this is the evolution of change. But coming back to this, it's all of our first time transversing from the dynamic of being a kid, of being a parent, to what is this new ground? With our generation who's having kids later, or not at all, I'm not a grandparent, so I'm not going to play the role of the grandparent. And I'm your kid, but I'm an adult, so what role do I play? It's an interesting one, and there's definitely room for creativity when it comes to dynamics. But going back to your point of control, Sophie, within some families, this is going to be wildly uncomfortable, especially for people who heavily played into the role of parent, of mom, of dad, of caretaker, of controller, of I tell you what you can do, and I give you permission for what you can and cannot do. So someone who is very privy to that role is going to be very uncomfortable when there's no longer a role for them to play, because you aren't playing the role of the kid of, thank you for letting me do this. I owe you everything because what I'm doing is because of you. When it no longer lines up, the roles kind of diminish. And again, going back to it, this is all of our first time transversing into a new reality. Well, there's a lot of resistance for some people who aren't able to give up control because they've built their life on control. If you're looking at yourself and if you're questioning, who am I? If I'm not just a kid, if I'm not just a daughter, if I'm not just a sister or a sibling, who am I to these people who our entire relationship was built on this idea, and I don't want to live within that idea of who I thought I was anymore? Who the hell am I? Well, I'm not going to play into that anymore. So that was, at the time, the only connector to these people. So now it's like this uncomfortable land of, I'm not playing into any of these roles. How do we now form a new relationship? Because we are no longer connected through the roles we are all playing. And this can be a very exciting time if everyone is willing to step up to the batter's mat, whatever. If everyone's willing to step up and look at themselves in the mirror and say, right, I'm not a dad. I'm not a mom. I'm not a sibling. That's not what I am. If you're looking in the mirror and saying that, okay, so how do I act with these people if I'm not playing into that role? And that can snowball into asking other questions. So again, it's a very exciting time. It's a new place of growth. It's a new place of not necessarily being comfortable. It's an exciting time, but of course you're going to face resistance from people who don't want to do that. They built their entire life on just trying to control everything so that they didn't have to actually do what they have to do in this moment. Then it's no longer going to be about them. It's going to be about, why are you doing this to our family? Why are you doing this?
Well, it's interesting because it's like so many people become parents. Well, it's interesting because it's like it feels like so many people become parents to become their role, to get your value. Like, you become a parent so you can be in the role of being a parent so that you can control and you can have power and you can have authority, or you can have a sense of purpose. And when you place so much of your purpose onto your family, of course you're going to be miserable when your kids grow up and you guys have to reinvent and shift the gears a little bit because you're forced to look at yourself. Like, it's so interesting. I'm thinking a lot about roles, and it's like not existing in a role in your family. We're not children anymore. So who are we? And it's like, yeah, in a perfect world, woohoo, the whole family, let's do a complete reorganization. Everything is great. Like, no resistance, no pain. But I don't think that ever happens. Ever. Unless your parents are fucking Michael Singer. Like, I don't think that happens. That it's like someone's going to be, they're like, right? Like, this is like years and years and years of trauma that our parents have from their parents who haven't faced shit, and they still haven't worked through shit with their parents.
I just want to comment on what you said. It's like, when it comes to families, we think of them as, oh, they're the best times of your life when your kids are young. So many beautiful memories. And that is true. Families are beautiful. But there's also this dark side to families, like you said, with generational trauma that just get passed on and passed on and passed on until our generation's really starting to break this all around for a multitude of reasons. And I guess I was going to say with the media or with like movies and such, but you do see the dark side of families in that as well. Because nothing is all good and nothing is all bad. But it's easy to glamorize families as no wrong can happen in there. But as soon as you say that, there's some weird shit that's going to be happening that's dangerous and unhealthy. So it's recognizing that families are, as everything else is. So of course there's going to be the good with the bad. So I just thought it was interesting. I think people try to cling on to this illusion that family is perfect and everything is perfect. And if I have family, then nothing can be wrong. Like you said, it's the biggest Band-Aid of all if we use it in that way. So it can be the antithesis of growth and change, especially with family expectation. You can't move. You can't do this. You can't do that because my life is built on this family. And there are certain maybe like regions of the world, regions of the US where traditionally the lineage goes further back where there is that familial expectation. But in the United States, it's like independence, individualism. So it separates you from taking responsibility for your family in that way. So that was just a side tangent, but I just think that was interesting of like, we can't just put a Band-Aid on and say, family is perfect. Let's go get our family photo. Let's go all wear white on the beach and look perfect and send it to everyone for Christmas so that they think that we have the perfect family. Like, that exists. People do that all the time. They want to show off how perfect their family looks. But it's like, going back to the Little Fires Everywhere, this show, it was interesting because there was a scene where they were doing that to take the photo for Christmas. And the youngest daughter, who doesn't like to wear dresses, doesn't like these things, her and her mom have this huge fight. And you're like, this is not a normal fight about her not wanting to wear a dress. There's some really deep, dark stuff here that goes back to the mom not wanting to have a fourth kid, wanting to get back into her career, not to just be a mom for her entire life. So it's interesting. Like, that's where you start to peel the layer, and it keeps going back and back and back of this one little fight. It's really deep. Like, what is the core of this? But let's go take our family photos so everyone thinks that we are perfect and we're beautiful and there's no problems here, because we're just going to like walk around the world and think that, our shit doesn't stink and we're perfect. And maybe like this is changing with time. I don't know, but I think that that's a real thing. I was curious where your thoughts were going, but I just thought that was an interesting point.
Well, it's like, how could a family ever be perfect if a family is nothing more than a group of individuals coming together, and each of those individuals are just suffering and are caught up in their mind and caught up in their thoughts and have so much pain that they don't know how to handle, and they think them handling it is the way that they treat their kids or their people in their life. And it's just like, family becomes a bucket just to drop your trauma. It's like, okay, we built this family. Great. Unload the trauma here, put it in this bedroom. Let's, project the anger on over here. It's like, it becomes this kind of safe haven. You subconsciously, as a parent, you may not realize that you're not healed. I think a lot of people of our parents' generations have no idea because therapy was not an option. And here's another thing, right? Like, we are the generation that is breaking the cycle. We are the generation who's saying, hey, I'm not going to ignore this, okay? You might want to ignore what's happened the last 30 years or last 20 years. You may want to act like nothing's wrong. You may want to act like this idea of family is perfect. And let's just keep doing the shit we've always done and just do it and move forward. But I'm over here seeing the truth. So of course, just like historically in every context, someone who speaks out about truth, think of like hippie movement or like whistleblowers or things of that context of we're gonna hurt or try to kill or shut down the person who's speaking up. And then we view them as crazy. Oh, this person's just crazy. Oh, they're saying, for example, they're saying something, they're getting abused in their house. Oh, who cares about it? Shut it down. Like, I feel like I've seen this so much of just like the person who speaks up is the crazy one. And then they start to think they're crazy and they think they're making it up because no one's fucking validating it. Their whole life, they're going through massive, massive, massive trauma in the four walls in their house. And there's no one to validate it because the people who are creating the trauma don't know that they're creating it. And the more I get to know people, it feels like this is just a common scenario of every family. A bunch of trauma getting dumped. No matter who you are, if you're sending out the Christmas photos of you all wearing your nice Brooks Brothers outfit, or if you're not, if you grow up completely different, we're all humans with a bunch of shit in us. So until we learn how to handle our inner world, of course, we're going to struggle. But what I'm trying to say is that, like, yes, it's really uncomfortable to wake up and say, wow, all this responsibility is on me. I'm awake. I'm going to have to confront this. And I think what I'm realizing is that yes and no, like, it is your responsibility to not keep playing into the role. It is your responsibility to not keep allowing yourself to be a victim to control. But you're not your parents' therapist. It is not your job to fix them. It is not your job to heal them. But I just want to validate to anyone who's going through these massive changes with their family that it is really painful to feel like the only one who's seeing the truth. The only one who's seeing the truth. I think it is those who have that level of clarity for a reason. Because we are putting in the work. We are making the efforts. We are saying, hey, there has to be more to life than just settling on what we've always settled on. There has to be more to life than so much pain. Like, let's figure out how to embrace the state of love and openness. And I just think that I really wanted to validate anyone who's going through that because I'm going through it of just recognizing, like, holy shit, like, I'm not the kid I once was. And I'm no longer going to show up like that. And yes, that is a big riff, and it takes the level of, okay, like, how can we put this puzzle together? Because the puzzle I thought was perfectly done actually was not finished at all. There's a lot of pieces that aren't going together. So how can we do some renovation on this? And it sucks to be the one who's renovating. It sucks to be the one who's making the decision to no longer move forward. But I think recognizing that our parents in a lot of ways are suffering, or anyone who's not awake is in pain. And that's where you can go from, okay, I'm going to heal on my own. Because of course, if I haven't healed, I'm going to feel so angry about my parents. I'm going to feel so angry interacting with them. And I'm going to do my healing on my own. And maybe that will open me up to recognize and see the truth of they're just a scared little boy or girl under my parents. They're just scared. They're terrified of this life. They're terrified of death just as much as we are. They're terrified of facing the truth of their childhood just as much as we are terrified of doing it right now. And this is why our parents didn't do it. Because it's scary to be the one. But it's freeing. So validating that and recognizing that it's possible to shift these dynamics. And I think it all starts with ourselves and taking accountability.
Well, I think when you're the one in the family who is saying, wait, I'm not a fan of the way things are going around here anymore. I don't know about you all, but my life, there's something has to give. So it's interesting to be that person and to recognize once you free yourself, you also free those around you. And it might be an uncomfortable, not fun journey. But coming back to a point that we both are trying to understand more and work through is that it's not always just about you. This earth, this world is not built around you individually. It's about us as a whole and us as a collective. And that alone can be difficult to understand, but it also is what gives us perspective to understand, well, what I'm going through right now is not fun. It's really uncomfortable. I don't know where it's going. It's uncertain. But just knowing that your feet are going to land somewhere and that you never know, by doing this for yourself, freeing yourself from these roles, you don't know who that's going to impact you around you. You might see it and you might not. You might not know whose life you touch, who you help, because it's not always about you. And I think the familial family system, it does lead us to believe that everything is about us, because we outgrow that. When we are children, everything is about us, like a survival instinct. But of course, that has to change when we are 30 years old. It's not about us anymore. We are given the attention and everything we needed to grow into these full-fledged humans. And now you recognize, right, it's not about us anymore. How can I think about others? And that's what's going to free us from our minds, our obsession with ourselves and our lives and our identity as a family, if you want to bring it back to that. What about just experiencing life, recognizing that your parents, your siblings, we're all going through life for the very first time. They don't know any more than you do. Once you hit adulthood, maybe they have more years lived, they have some wisdom, but they're no different than you, that they don't have the answers like they had when you were a kid and you were 3 years old and you were scared of the dark. They don't have the answers. And that's a part of growing up, of realizing you can't look to your parents for everything. You can't look to them to give you the answer, because who are they to know? And who are you to put that pressure on them to know? And that is an illusion we can live in. We can, keep that experience with our parents the same as it was when we were children. And the unexamined family, there's going to be some shit there. So it's just a matter of examining it and moving forward how you want to move forward. Everyone just being themselves, not having expectation on each other, and realizing that your parents are just as much on a journey or a dance as you are. There is no expectation of what they should and shouldn't do for you, because they are also just humans and they owe you that as well. You're just a human living here. And that just leads me to my last question of, are nuclear families natural? Are they unnatural? Were they something that was created in this idea of colonialism of, you have a family, you have to go and you have to take care of your family, and that separates you from the rest of the world. You have to measure yourself up against, is my family as good as the family next door? It's so rooted in the idea of yourself, the idea of you. And don't get me wrong, you go through so much beautiful and hard shit with your family that you can be bonded by these beautiful experiences of just going through life with another human. But when you bring in these familial expectations of, oh, you went to this college, so I want all of my kids to go to this college. What is that? So I think it's separating the difference between going through life with these people. You don't know why you're going through life with them compared to going through life with these people who expect something and you expect something in return. You don't have to go through life that way. You can just go through life with these people who you love because you've just gone through experiences together and you've looked at them with clarity and truth versus trying to force an idea of what it means to be a family. I think they're two different things. And I think it can be much deeper and much more beautiful when you're honest and open about what this life is and choosing how you want to move forward with each other.
Yeah, I feel like this topic is one we could talk about forever, especially the question of wait, why did we come up with the nuclear family? Why? What is this, right? Something that was created. Okay, you birth a child, so we have to now create something, a place for the child to go. I don't know. I think looking to history can better understand that, like, yeah, we are in 2024, right? Like, the earth has been around for billions of years. We are in the future in some crazy way. Like, where are these traditions coming from? Where are these things coming from? I think when we look to history, we get more context and we can recognize, oh, this might not work right now. This might not work anymore, right? This doesn't really make sense anymore. It doesn't make sense to marginalize other human beings and to suppress other human beings and limit their rights. It doesn't make sense. I don't see why it ever did. I guess because our consciousness level is rising.
Control. That's why it made sense. It was always about control.
Yeah, it is always about control, trying to control other people so you can find purpose and you can feel satisfied and you can feel happy and you can feel like you're not bothered and you have this walking on eggshells. And it's just, I think if anything I'm taking away from this conversation is that we can recognize the reality of the truth of our families and we can look at it and it's painful. It is confusing. It doesn't make any sense. How can this be true? How can this family I thought everything was fine really isn't? But that also gives us an opportunity to grow. Like everything on this journey, it is never black and white. Everything is, you can't have happiness without sadness. You can't have change without pain, right? Like growing pains are real, but we're able to grow and that capacity to change. And I just want to say, like, my mom meditates literally 5 days a week, I think plus now. And she listens to Michael Singer. Like she's tapped into her. And that's only happened because I started to be myself. The only thing we can do in this life, we can't change anyone, but we can just be ourselves because the ripples are so real. The ripples are so real. Your parents, your siblings, your friends, everybody will feel it. It's not even anything you're saying. It's how open are you being? How non-reactive are you being? How much are you just showing up in reality, in this moment, not tied to the past, not tied to the future? How much are you just showing up here and just having fun in reality? And when we do that, when we don't take shit so seriously and we don't hold ourselves back and we don't just say things to make other people happy, we give other people a chance to think about, wait, oh, okay, well, they didn't say that. So I wonder, why do I always say that? Why am I always reacting so much? Oh, it's possible to feel, oh, that person feels so relaxed. Like, what is that? I want to have some of that. What is that relaxation that they have, that they're just goofy and dancing and, oh, they must be enjoying life. Oh, so I'm not enjoying life. Everything in life's just a mirror. We're just mirroring to other people. Everybody looks at something in reality and they perceive it about themselves. How does that have to do with who I am? And as much as that can be dangerous, it could also be a tool for growth and self-reflection. So it can be painful to be the ones who are breaking this cycle of suffering, but it can also be so beautiful because all we're doing is being ourselves and we're paving the way for others to say, hey, I'm going to hop on that train or I won't. And either way, it's not our responsibility. But all we knew is that we tried by just showing up. And that's all we can ever do in life.
Well, it's like the classic saying of the only thing guaranteed in life is change. Change is always going to happen. And I think just like this idea of control within families is us trying to keep families the exact same as they were when we were 15 years old. Of course, that's a time stamp in the past. We can't bring that to be the continuation of our entire relationship. It's just that. And I think within age gaps, there can be difficulties of continuing to grow because people hit a certain age and they're like, all right, I give up. Life's what it is. I'm not trying to change. I'm just trying to enjoy and be comfortable. And I think that's where it's like expectations from certain people within families say, well, this is what I want in life. So to their kids, well, this is what you should want in life. Why are you looking to change and move and go to a new country or, whatever it may be? And I think it just comes back to we're not meant to stay the same. It's unnatural to stay the same. So that's why these familial expectations can feel unnatural because we are just meant to continue on this journey of what we call life, of this dance that we call life and just experience it. And of course, it's going to change with each coming moment, each coming decade. And that's the fun of it. So as soon as our families are able to recognize that we don't have to all play into this role that we don't have to, that we can choose something else. Families can start to mean an entirely different thing. They don't have to just, again, be that timestamp of how things were when you were 15. They're this constant evolution because we as humans are constantly evolving if we're not settling and just trying to be comfortable. And again, it all comes back to this willingness. Who's willing? And if you are dedicated, if you are willing yourself, oftentimes that's contagious for other people. So I think that's a very exciting thing to remember. Things take time. Things will always take time. Things are always playing out to the unmet eye. You don't know how it's playing out, even if it feels like everything's going wrong. You don't know how it's going to look in 3 years, 3 months, right? So it's that unknown component. And I think that we have a beautiful opportunity to impact our parents, our families, by just being ourselves, because that oftentimes will be a breath of fresh air. And it's something people want, but they don't realize. And they're forced to face things about themselves that are uncomfortable. But life isn't always comfortable. What is exciting isn't always comfortable. It's about just continuing to take the next step forward, because no one wants to stay still in their life. You want to keep moving forward. That's what's exciting, no matter who you are. So I really enjoyed this conversation. And I appreciate you, Sophie, for bringing this to the microphones today. And yeah, I feel refreshed from having a conversation that wasn't about us. So I appreciate you bringing this today.
And as always, if anyone wants us to dive deeper in this, like this topic, I've thought a lot about, and there's so many different avenues to take, and there's so many different things to talk about. So this is just one episode, scratching the surface. I feel like we're always just doing that, scratching the surface, going deeper. And yeah, well, this is a great conversation. It's had me thinking a lot about the importance of change and of not seeing the same. So thank you to the listener. We hope that this conversation was exactly what you needed it to be, because that's all we are ever doing. Just being exactly where we are, showing up, talking into these damn mics, and just expressing ourselves in reality, being reality without thinking about it. So hope you all have a great weekend. Enjoy wherever you are, being exactly where you need to be. No pressure on the weekend. Just let yourself be. And we'll talk to you guys next week.